and begun a little bit differently. On several occasions, our region has been impacted by smoke from wildfires originating from outside of our region. So it was a real drill last week to pull together our comms team, our environmental team, our air quality. But if you were listening to the radio or on TV, you probably heard Council of Governments referenced. And a big thank you, particularly to Sunil Kumar, who's our principal environmental engineer, for going above and beyond last week. All right, so our podcast, 2 podcasts to flag for you, and hopefully you'll listen, this weekend to our Think Regionally podcast with Bob McCartney. Climate resiliency is the one that's up now, and that's all about how area governments, utilities, transportation agencies are working to protect our communities as well as our major investments in infrastructure. We have folks from DC Water, WMATA, as well as Charles County Climate Resiliency Authority sharing their perspectives about COG's work, including TPB's new resiliency working group. And kind of fresh in the can is a podcast with Penny Gross, which will be live in sometime in the future with Charles McCartney. I think you just recorded that, Supervisor? Okay, good. The notes are correct. But talking about her illustrious career and thoughts on COG and the region moving forward. An announcement, and we will send this to you all over email, but we now have live on the COG website an infrastructure funding page. So about 500 of the programs from the Infrastructure Investments Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act that applied to your jurisdiction or the region are now up on our site, searchable by application window, searchable by the amount of the award, and all the information that you need to know for your jurisdiction to apply. So that is live now. These application windows are opening and closing pretty quickly, so we've put them all in one place for you. The retreat, Chair Stewart mentioned, July 14th and 15th. The 14th, we're going to focus on Metro. On the 14th, we have the CEO, Randy Clark, coming. We have Secretary Wiedefeld from Maryland. We have Jennifer DeBrule, who runs the Department of Rail and Public Transit in Virginia. And we have Jenny Reed, the Director of Office and Budgeting for the District of Columbia. We're going to do a level set, kind of talk about, make sure folks are up to speed with the compact, how we got here, how Metro is governed. Mr. Clark will present funding challenges that Metro is facing next year, and we're going to have a facilitated discussion on your all's thoughts and a way forward with WMATA. That evening, Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, our new Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, will keynote our dinner. She has a transportation background as well, so it's fitting that she speaks to the group on Friday. On that Saturday, we're going to talk economic development and workforce. We have Stephen Murray, who's the former VDP Director of Virginia, now with Strata Education Network, facilitating a discussion with Montgomery College, with Northern Virginia Community College workforce folks, and representatives from Maryland, DC, and Virginia in the economic development fields. So looking forward to that. And with that, that wraps up my report. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you so much for that update. Our next item is I'll ask if there are any amendments to our agenda today. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the May 10th meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes? I have Supervisor Gross moving and Vice Chair Allen seconding. All those in any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next, we have a consent agenda. We have 3 resolutions on the consent agenda today, which can be found on page 17 of the board packet. Part of the consent agenda includes the approval of the Round 10 cooperative forecasts, in addition to an item on regional public safety radio communication encryption and a blue-green infrastructure community engagement planning effort. Is there a motion and a second for the consent agenda? Supervisor Gross, and this time moves, and then Vice Chair Lux second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, the consent agenda passes. All right, moving right along to our first discussion today, we're going to talk about the U.S. Federal Rail Administration, and we're going to get an update. We're going to hear from Jennifer Mitchell, who is the Federal Railroad Administration Deputy Administrator. Ms. Mitchell has been a longtime advocate for our region, and we are grateful to have her with us today to talk about our regional rail connectivity, including MARC, VRE, Amtrak, and Metro. Ms. Mitchell, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board. Please, looking forward to speaking with all of you. It's great to see so many people that I've worked with in the past here, and I am really excited as well to be here today with our Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation, Ann Shikani, who you'll hear from next, and the Union Station Redevelopment Corporation President and CEO, Doug Carr, who will also be giving you all a tour later. So I'm here, though, today to talk a little bit about FRA's rail policies and funding programs, also some of the efforts that we have to grow passenger and commuter rail here in the DC region, and actions related to Washington Union Station as well. So first of all, I'd be remiss without mentioning the President's bipartisan infrastructure law, which was signed by the President just 20 months ago. It feels like it's been a lot sooner than that, but we in that law did receive $66 billion for passenger and freight rail programs. That includes $24 billion for the Northeast Corridor through our federal state partnership program. And I mention that specifically because those are funds that Union Station could potentially be eligible to receive in the future based on applications. In that, though, we also have laid out our priorities for passenger rail around the country. So I know that Ann is going to speak a little bit about our BIL funding opportunities, but quickly, there's a couple opportunities, particularly that I wanted to mention about FRA discretionary rail programs. Our federal state partnership program, again, has a Northeast Corridor component of $24 billion and also a national component of $12 billion. In December, we released our notice of funding opportunity for the Northeast Corridor portion of that. That's based on what's called an inventory, Northeast Corridor inventory, that lists the projects that are eligible for those funds. And Union Station is listed in that inventory as well. The inventory does prioritize projects based on readiness and based on need. In addition to that, we did release our notice of funding opportunity for our national non-NEC projects, which are available for passenger rail improvements and high-speed rail corridors around the country. In both cases, we are in the process of reviewing applications for that now. We have what's called our Corridor Identification and Development Program. That will be preparing our pipeline of projects around the country that will be eligible for funding in the future as well. We do expect that we have received some applications from Maryland and Virginia for corridors here, so we're again in the process of reviewing that. We also have our Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements, a very popular and longstanding program here with FRA, again, a discretionary program. We've used this to fund rail improvements in the DC region in the past. We have applications in front of us now as well. And then finally, we have what's called our Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. We just, last week, this is our first time releasing awards for that. We just announced those last week. We were very proud of that. We did award projects or funding for a project in Maryland, as well as some grade crossing projects in Virginia as well. So that'll be another program that we would expect that localities, states can also apply for, but it's really to eliminate and make safer railroad and highway grade crossings. So as you may know, FRA released the Union Station Expansion Project Supplemental Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or SDEIS, in May. This was developed in response to comments that we received back in 2020 on the draft environmental impact statement. It also lays out the proposal for future expansion of the program. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about that because I know Doug's going to talk about it, but it does include proposals for reconstructing the tracks and platforms, as well as providing new internal circulation space and amenities, and the expansion project would also accommodate higher levels of train service in the future. We know that there's a lot of interest here in the DC region for what we call run-through service for commuter rail, including having MARC trains being able to connect into Virginia, and likewise having Virginia Railway Express trains being able to connect into suburban Maryland as well, which will also could be facilitated additional service in the future with the expansion of this. The project will support future, current and future VRE and MARC service plans, and it will complement investments that we are already making in the Northeast Corridor and south of Washington, D.C., including the Long Bridge project that connects D.C. and Virginia. We welcome public and agency comments on that supplemental draft EIS. We will be holding 2 public hearings on June 27th and 28th, 2023. But first, turning to the DC region specifically, we do fully recognize the importance of intercity passenger and freight rail on local service here in the DC region. While FRA is the owner of Washington Union Station, we recognize that this is a station that has a historic role as a multimodal transportation hub here in the DC region. It is not only just an Amtrak station, it is an important regional asset with significant benefits to the DC region's economic strength. It is an asset that has connections to Metro Rail, buses, and micromobility. It is a commuter hub that is bringing Virginia and Maryland residents into the city for downtown jobs. Union Station connects the region's businesses and economies in the North and the Southeast corridors through Amtrak service. And it brings residents and tourists alike to this region through intercity bus connections. And in the future conditions, which you're going to hear some more about from Doug later, the improved rail and transit access created by the Union Station expansion will generate new transit-oriented development, which will generate additional local tax revenues and benefit the DC area's economy. So that to ensure the continued viability of this vital asset, we need to see greater collaboration and engagement to consider station needs today and for the future. Again, I want to recognize Doug Carr for his leadership in this issue and for bringing about a renewal of the station today with a look towards the future. We're very excited that USRC will be stepping up as the designated project sponsor for this expansion. So DOT looks to the district, the state of Maryland, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the localities within to engage and invest to allow the expansion of the project to advance. We want to recognize the DC government for also supporting a Union Station expansion project delivery and governance study that's underway right now. We are part of that effort with USRC, Amtrak, the DC Office of Planning, and the District Department of Transportation. So we look forward to hearing the study's results with recommendations to identify an optimal project delivery strategy, financing and governance mechanisms that will be needed to help realize this true mega project. We look forward to working with Doug and others on the expansion project as it progresses. So again, as the owner of Washington Union Station, FRA is committed to ensuring a successful transformation that will facilitate intermodal transportation, preserve and maintain the historic station, sustain the economic viability of the station, and integrate the station with adjacent neighborhoods and planned development. So we look forward to working with all of you, and we look forward to increased engagement from regional stakeholders and governments to build on these recent steps. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that update. Colleagues, we'll spend a few moments now asking questions and having a discussion. Please let me know if you'd like to ask a question, and I think I will kick it off.
Sure.
I actually had 2. One is if you could go back to the MARC and VRE topic. You discussed that briefly, but if you could lay out some of the plans for folks and what are the efforts going on around there. You know, particularly myself, I'm in Montgomery County, have a lot of residents who would love to see expanded MARC rail.
Sure, and there's a lot underway right now. We're aware that the state of Maryland and the Commonwealth of Virginia have signed a memorandum of understanding, partnering together to look at ways that they can bring run-through service to a reality in the future. This service is going to be also further supported by the expansion of the Long Bridge that is planned right now. I should say that is an application that's in front of us right now for funding, so I can't comment specifically on that project. But there are some technical challenges to that, including some challenges with the track layout and the platform layout at Union Station. But we are aware that future plans will be able to help support some more run-through service, particularly on the Camden and Penn lines of MARC through to potentially to Alexandria on VRE. So we think it's an exciting opportunity. We are very hopeful that we can partner with the region, continue to help support that. I know that as well, COG did look at this issue several years ago and determined that there is some potential with the markets here in the region to support that expanded service in the future. So
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Vice Chair Allen?
Here, which button to push?
Yep.
Sorry, I have two different buttons. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to
And
see you.
I will say I am thrilled with the updated version of the EIS in the spring. I think it really took into consideration a lot of the feedback, and a lot of the comments have been shared from the district's perspective, from the community's perspective. I will add to the mini list of things that Union Station is. It's also located right here in Ward 6, the ward I represent, and it is a hub for our community and for our neighborhood. And so we want to make sure the future sets us up for the next 100 years as a top regional transit hub, and also make sure it integrates really well within the surrounding neighborhood and doesn't end up being an island. And so I just really appreciate the hard work that's gone into a revised version of what it can be, and really excited about it. You mentioned a little bit about some of the decisions around some of the location decisions around platforms, piers, and footings. I will say, for folks that don't know, the district has put in over $200 million to rebuild the H Street, we call it the Hopscotch Bridge. But we have to have very clear decision points that are made, I believe Amtrak in particular, around exactly where those footings go, so we can really maximize that. Have we gotten to a final decision point, and has Amtrak given a thumbs up so that we can proceed?
I am actually, I hope you don't mind, I am actually going to defer that question to Doug, who is going to be able, sorry, Doug.
Doug probably knows I was going to ask this question.
Who's going to be able to give you more of an update on the latest, because I also can't speak for Amtrak on that. But I know that it's definitely something we are aware of, and we have, spoken with DC DOT as well, and we know that there's a lot of interest in moving forward expeditiously on that. We certainly do recognize the investments that DDOT has made as well into H Street on that in the corridor there.
I'll just say it's like the first domino that's got to fall, because we can't take the next steps till we get that piece done. And in February, I was told it was going to happen in the next 30 days. And in March, I was told it was happen in the next 30 days. Then April, the next 30 days. So there's an urgency, I think, to get Amtrak to the table, wherever Amtrak is, because we got to make sure we get this done.
Yep, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
We'll be happy to convey that. Again, Doug may have some more information he can touch on when he's speaking.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. All right. As my colleagues think of other questions, I will ask you another one.
Sure.
So safety plans and freight carriers. We know there have been some obvious high profile incidents. Many of the rails do travel through some of our jurisdictions that are highly populated areas. And, we'd like to hear more about what steps are being undertaken regarding safety, reevaluating, precision scheduled railroading by freight carriers, and anything else you can speak to on that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, safety is our first priority at FRA. And clearly these very preventable derailments that have occurred have shined a much stronger spotlight on the issues of rail safety across the country. So shortly after the incident in East Palestine, the Secretary did issue a plan that included a number of recommendations that DOT would be taking, as well as requests for the industry to take, and also for Congress as well. So some of those actions that were recommended to Congress have been incorporated into a rail safety bill that is in front of Congress right now. We expect to see some markup of that and some developments of that in the not too distant future. However, in the meantime, we are taking a number of actions. We have done a national survey of what we call high hazardous flammable transport, as well to make sure that we can identify any additional flaws that might be on tracks that do carry hazardous fuels. We will have the results of that shortly. We've also taken a deep dive specifically into Norfolk Southern's safety practices. I know here in the district, it's actually CSX that has their rail lines through the district, but we will be doing deep dives on safety for all 6 of the Class 1 carriers as well in the future. So we recognize that there, again, is a lot of focus on this right now. We're very cognizant of that, and we'll be having some more results coming out soon. So.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. Yes, Mayor.
Hey, good afternoon. Sorry to get here a little bit late, but I'm wondering, do you have any updates on the maglev deployment program?
So FRA has been working with the state of Maryland, who's the grantee specifically on that project, through a NEPA process. The NEPA process is on pause right now, but we have been working with the state and on potential next steps there. So we don't have anything specific we can announce right now in terms of those specific next steps, but we are coordinating very closely with the new secretary and his team in Maryland as well.
Yeah. If I could follow up, the NEPA process has been on pause now for about 1.5 years, which is very unusual. So do you have a sense when that NEPA process may begin again?
We need the state of Maryland to take a few steps in order for that to occur, but we're again in discussions with them right now, and we would like to see this progress to the next step.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Well, Ms. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us today and for all your work. We very much appreciate it. All right, thank you. All right, our next item up is optimizing federal funding opportunities available to local governments in the transportation sector. And we will hear from Ann Shikany, the U.S. Department of Transportation Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy. Ms. Shikany will provide an update on the current focus areas and priorities of the Department of Transportation and share federal funding opportunities for local governments in the sector. Ms. Shikany, thank you for joining us today, and you can take it away.
Hi, thank you. It's Shikany. No problem. Thank you very much for having me here, board members. I'm very happy to be joining my colleagues, Jennifer Mitchell and Doug Carr. Today, I'm here to speak to you about a couple of things, our discretionary grant programs for infrastructure, in addition to the ones that Deputy Administrator Mitchell has already spoken about, our administration's priorities for those grant dollars, and the need for strong regional leadership and partnership, both for regional transit and at Union Station. So as Jennifer mentioned, 20 months ago, President Biden signed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which was a once-in-a-generation investment in our nation's infrastructure and competitiveness. And while Infrastructure Week used to be a punchline, now we are very proud that we are delivering an infrastructure decade. To date, our administration has announced over 32,000 specific projects and awards, reaching over 4,500 communities across all 50 states, DC, and territories. And the impacts of these investments are reaching every part of the country. The Biden-Harris administration is ready to follow through on our promise to deliver results to rebuild roads, bridges, ports, airports, upgrading public transit, rail systems, and delivering better, safer infrastructure that will create good-paying jobs and grow the economy. And right here in the metropolitan Washington area, you've already received $340 million in grants from DOT. And this is not the full list. I'm just providing kind of a highlight. If you want a full list, I'm happy to get that to you. But there was $120 million in support for Ramada through the American Rescue Plan. The COG actually received a small grant for $100,000 on a mobility pilot program. The region received a very large bridge grant for $72 million for I-35 northbound bridge over the Potomac. There were low-no grants, $9 million to DDOT, $25 million to Prince George's counties, and there will be more low-no awards announced very soon. There are 2 raise grants in the region, $10 million for DDOT to the South Capitol Street Trail construction, which will extend the Anacostia River Trail network down to the southernmost parts of DC. $20 million grant to Maryland DOT to improve the New Carrollton Rail Station, which will improve regional connectivity through MARC, Metro Rail, Amtrak, and incorporate new connections to Metro Bus, regional bus services, and the future Maryland Purple Line light rail. There were also awards for the Safe Streets for All program. Prince George's County and Anne Arundel County both received grants that will improve safety for all road users. I do want to note that DDOT, unfortunately, legislatively was limited from applying for the first round of Safe Streets for All. We've been trying to get that amended. I will note, though, that the COG is an eligible entity that can apply for projects in DC. So we're hoping for the next round that maybe the COG can be part of the solution there to get DC some applications in. So this is a very well-resourced region, as evidenced by the projects that I just listed. And we know that you're very capable of submitting successful grant applications. And so I do want to highlight some opportunities that are coming up this summer and fall. So the charging and fueling infrastructure CFI grants just closed yesterday. Hopefully there are a couple included in there. We've got our combined NOFO for mega infra and rural that'll be coming out this summer. We have Protect grants, which are focused on resiliency, $1.4 billion. It's going to close August 18th. Our Reconnecting Communities program is going to be coming out with a second NOFO that will include another program, and which will increase from $1 billion to $4 billion total. There's Safe Streets for All, and as I mentioned, that closes in July. We'd love to get DC something this round, an application in. And then the SMART grant program is coming this fall with $5 million for innovative mobility solutions for transportation. And then our Thriving Communities program is open this summer as well, which provides technical assistance. And when you're putting your grants applications together, please keep in mind our administration priorities. Those include safety, equity, reducing barriers to opportunity, climate and resiliency, good paying jobs, and connecting affordable housing to transportation and lowering overall transportation and housing cost burdens for communities. So if you have any questions about the grant process or putting together a strong grant, we have a new resource, the DOT Navigator, that will help communities. I can send that a number of links and different materials along if helpful. And another way that you can make sure that you have a strong application is by coordinating regionally. And the COG is a great mechanism and resource for regional governments when they're applying for federal grants. When we coordinate across the region, it's not only a stronger grant application, but better infrastructure outcomes in the long term. One place that is incredibly important to have that regional coordination is right across the street at Union Station. As Administrator Mitchell mentioned, this is a property that's owned by US DOT and managed very well by our colleague Doug Carr at USRC. It's used by all parts of the region. It's a pivotal hub. It's the front door to our nation's capital. So I'll leave the long-term vision for the station to Doug, but we really do need to see strong regional leadership at the station. As Jennifer mentioned, we are engaging on the governance study at Union Station, and we are taking that very seriously. We hope that you all will as well. To see the fullest potential at the station, we're going to need regional leadership and resources and support. So I hope that you all are going to work very well with Doug and our federal team to support the station. And kind of last topic I'll mention, as your executive director already brought up, is acknowledging the WMATA $750 million budget shortfall for fiscal year 24. we know this is a huge issue. It's not unique to the DC region. It's happening across the country at all major transit agencies. And I realize the crisis is a little bit more immediate for WMATA. So I can't say that we have a solution at the ready, but we are going to be there with you. We're going to sit at the table. We're going to be there to think creatively on how to fix this going forward. We need transit to support equitable low carbon transportation, and not having it is not a realistic option. This is why, as part of President Biden's fiscal year 24 budget, FTA asked for new flexibility to allow capital funds to be used for operating expenditures, including for large systems, which is over 200,000 in population. That flexibility would require state and local governments to maintain their fair share of transit funding, but it does recognize our shared financial future. This approach will keep non-federal funding in place and give FTA recipients the ability to direct urbanized area formula dollars to the greatest needs, including operations. And the next step on that is congressional action, which is tough. So that is not the only quiver or arrow in our quiver. One other piece is the federal workforce of the region returning to the office. Earlier this year, OMB directed all federal agencies to update their staffing plans to substantially increase meaningful in-person work at federal headquarters. And all of those plans have been submitted, including US DOTs. And I can tell you we took this exercise very, very seriously. While I can't get into the specifics of our plans, I do anticipate to see a slow and steady return to in-person work at headquarters offices in the region. And we're hoping that that also tracks with an increased use of transit and commuter rail. So I had the chance to talk with the COG team in preparing for today, and they shared some creative ideas related to smart benefits. I think that, anything is worth a conversation. If I can be helpful in setting up any connections with the department, we are here to think through creative solutions. So let's make sure to work on that together. As we're coming back into a new normal post-COVID-19, it's going to be a transition. There's a lot of work to do, but there are also a lot of opportunities to invest in the communities that we want to live in. And with that, I'm happy to open it up to discussion.
Great. Thank you for that overview. We appreciate it. Any questions or comments from the board? Vice Chair Allen?
Thanks. I appreciate the presentation, and it's really exciting how much opportunity is. I love it's not infrastructure week anymore, infrastructure decade. I love that. Speaking specifically for the District of Columbia, I wanted to ask from your office's perspective, we were thrown off early on with, for example, the Safe Streets and Roads grant program. First, we thought the district was unable to apply because we're not a state, though we should be. Then it turns out that we weren't able to apply because under the program, the way it's being interpreted, we are not considered a city within a state. And so we need, I believe, some additional guidance from federal DOT, from your office, to help understand. We will apply for and work to win grants that are state level, but
I'll get you specific guidance, but from what I don't know on the legislative text why you guys are ineligible. It's a little tricky, but I do know that the COG can submit your application.
And I love that we can partner with COG to do that. I feel like we should be able to go directly.
I agree, and we were working on a legislative fix.
Okay.
But that takes congressional action probably.
They love us these days. They're really fans. They're big fans. I appreciate that you're aware of it and it's on your radar. I would love to work with you and our DOT just to help figure out what the solution is. Certainly the partnership with COG, if that's the route we got to go. But I feel like it's setting us up for just,
we do
it's
need
more
to fix
complicated
it
than it
this
needs to be.
term. I agree.
Yeah.
And so we'll figure out if it's going to take legislative action, we'll get the right language, we'll get it and we'll push for it. And we'll use a workaround with our
But
partners.
you believe that you've kind of ruled out that it's a interpretation or guidance from the department. It is legislative?
That was the most recent thing that I heard, but I'll go back and check.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Chair Dorsey.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Shikani, thank you for the comments on WMATA and offering that the Department of Transportation would certainly be at the table. I want to take the rosiest sort of outlook at that it's not only a seat at the table, but an active part of the solution. I know you know this well, so I don't want to lecture, but certainly WMATA's fiscal cliff is in many ways tied to its permanent structure to accommodate the federal workforce. And while we certainly appreciate the significant contributions the federal government has made during the most recent crisis and ongoing for capital, there's always been that glaring gap, aside from the Smart Benefits program, about how the federal government partners in WMATA's operating budget. So hopefully that seat at the table results in some active partnership, because I think everybody here knows we're not just looking at a fiscal 25 significant issue with WMATA. It is one that is structural and will persist beyond that. So it's not about a temporary fix. It's about a long-term partnership. And so I'm very heartened to hear your words.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I am not seeing any. Thank you so much for that overview and for joining us today. We very much appreciate it. All right, well, I think our two speakers have provided a great deal of information and actually teed up nicely our third presentation for this afternoon. Our next item will be to get a briefing on the plans to redevelop Union Station. And as I mentioned before, after this, we will be taking a walk over to Union Station to look at the redevelopment in person. So today we are joined by Union Station Redevelopment Corporation President and CEO Doug Carr. Doug, thank you very much for joining us today. And I had more setup to do, but I think we've already had that in our conversation. And so I'll just turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Douglas Carr, President and CEO of Union Station Redevelopment Corporation, and thankful to be joined by Administrator Mitchell and Ann Shikani. And I wanted to just start by thanking Clark and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments for giving me an opportunity today to speak with this great group. And I'm very excited to share with you the plans for restoring and expanding Union Station. Am I aiming this there? Oh, there we go. It's a little time delay. So as with Union Station, I thought it was appropriate to really kind of start with the history and the first century of service that the station has provided to the city and region of Washington, D.C. It's an iconic, one-of-a-kind building, constructed in 1907, a grand station and a Daniel Burnham design station, incorporating the best of international design concepts, and at its time, truly a world-class station. I draw inspiration from a quote that Daniel Burnham said, specific to the station, where he said, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood and will probably not themselves be realized." Washington Union Station, at its peak, kind of looking on the right-hand side, in the 1940s, realizing significant ridership growth, demonstrating the importance of infrastructure, underpinning the benefits of mobility, and facilitating decades of economic growth, even providing significant wartime logistics. Fast forward, like many great stations in the United States, in the periods of the 60s and 70s were very rough times for train travel and stations as a whole. Whether it was Penn Station, New York, or Washington, D.C., the contention of rising with the rise of the automobile, the patterns of suburbanization, the investments in interstate highway travel really spelled tough times for stations throughout the country. That led to a period of probably the 1970s and showing here in the photo, 70 and 76, of what I would call exploratory redevelopment. Some of you may have known or know the history of the National Visitor Center, ultimately an unpopular, but really kind of signifying the challenges that stations of that era were facing and the impetus to redeveloping, which really brought us around to the 1980s, specific to Washington Union Station. In this decade, USRC, Union Station Redevelopment Corporation, was born and was directed as essential caretaker for the Department of Transportation and the FRA to facilitate P3 redevelopment, which was done to redevelop and reimagine the station, which is generally what you see today. That development was over 40 years old, so we are now starting to think about what is the next cycle in redevelopment for the station and securing the station's future for the long term. So 2022 is where we are today. You know, there are elements of a redeveloped and restored station back to its original condition. A large part of that is my organization, USRC's mission. And while historic renovation efforts are constantly ongoing, and this is a key part of USRC, we are also looking to deliver on our charter and mission, which also calls for preserving the station as a multimodal mixed-use commercial center, the transportation center of the region. And while we have an eye towards the future, I also want to underscore that we are looking to make improvements now. The best way that we can secure the future of the station is to start looking at the reinvestments that are needed today and balancing them. To give a little bit more of an overview on Union Station redevelopment and our mission and charter, acknowledging that this is the only federally owned station in the country with DOT and FRA as our partners. USRC is a nonprofit mission-focused entity representing ownership of the station. USRC's mission, as I mentioned, is number one, formed to deliver on the overarching purpose and mission of redeveloping the Union Station complex. Number two, the preservation and restoration of its historical and architectural significance. And number three, maintaining the facility as a long-term functionality as a multimodal mixed-use transportation center. In essence, Union Station redevelopment is charged with looking after the best interests of the station as a whole, both now and into the future. For the station expansion project, Union Station USRC will essentially be going back to its roots. USRC has a history of innovative reinvention of the station, and today we must use that same inspiration and creativity to secure the future of the station for the next century of service. Also on this slide, really highlights the spaghetti-like structure of a lot of the entities and the relationship, but I would just, like to point, and highlight the importance of a central project sponsor. A sponsor that can balance all the needs and the inputs across various operators, commercial aspects, retail aspects, and including entities that are not directly listed on this slide, including VRE, MARC, and WMATA. Success at Washington Union Station, both near and long term, will ultimately be a byproduct of regional support that we are able to develop and receive. While our board of directors include federal and local representation, we want to continue to think as we position and prepare for the station expansion plan on what does our board for the future need to look like? How do we engage regional representation and interests? And how do we best integrate the needs and priorities of the regional transportation operators? To the point of multimodal functionality, we are more than just a train station. We are the heart of transportation in the DMV area. And we have always been a central hub. Since the station opened in 1907, there have been various transit modes that have continuously operated. We've moved on from the carriages and the horse-drawn mode of transportation to cars, taxis, buses, trains, subways, and streetcars. We are the busiest transportation center in the region. We currently host the largest intercity bus operation and station, and also clearly serve as a transit hub and the end-of-line destinations for MARC, VRE, in addition to being Metro's busiest station. And back to the USRC mission is our responsibility for providing an environment where all operators, both transit, retail, commercial, can succeed. And I'd like to, now that we've covered the first 115 years of the station, what does the future hold? The future mission and objectives I'd like to highlight. At its core, the station expansion project is designed to accommodate railroad growth. This is increasing capacity and growth in ridership. And to accommodate that growth, the expansion is designed for that specific need. In addition, it is also intended to enhance intermodal travel and provide viable and reliable connections to connect people where they want to go and further connect the region. It will also serve an important goal of local neighborhood integration. This project can literally bridge the east-west divide that exists today in the city and that has existed for over a century. And this is a great opportunity to further connect communities across that divide. In addition to this, the opportunities for improved accessibility and safety, the modernization initiatives that the station expansion project includes, is an opportunity to meet the needs for all people, including with limitations and disability, and also an opportunity to modernize safety and security infrastructure. In addition, the improved operational efficiency from both a transit operator and a facility operations perspective will improve the passenger experience. And not to lose sight, to ensure that the station is preserved, the historic elements of the station, which will be preserved as part of the station expansion plan. And we look at it as improving the future while preserving the past. Taken together, we're confident that with our partners, this will greatly improve the customer experience. And broadly speaking, this is something that I've seen firsthand in New York, where it's resetting expectations and people's expectations of train travel and reinstilling an element of civic pride. And we are very confident that the investment in infrastructure can also be a catalyst for sustainable growth and help ensure the economic viability of the region. On the screen now, briefly a review of the preferred alternative. This is quite literally the product of many years of planning, listening, and adjusting design concepts to incorporate the feedback from the public and the community. We have listened to the community and like to think that this project is shaped by their input. A couple major points of emphasis that I would like to highlight is the preservation and maintenance of the historic station, which again is our best asset, one of a kind. Further elements of emphasis on the station expansion plan and the modifications over the years is the reduction of the vehicular traffic and congestion at street level. The incorporation of subgrade ramps and parking and pickup and drop off functions that are happening below street and dedicated points of pickups will enhance the pedestrian friendly nature of the design. The improved pedestrian and bike access, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner above the bus garage area is green space. Touching on the bus operation, this is also the station expansion projects represents a great improvement for the integration of the bus facility itself. Realizing a centralized, prominent, and intentionally connected multimodal aspect, which has not been the case as of today. The project also has focused on improved urban design by incorporating public green spaces and via the reduction of surface traffic, and also by improving symmetrical public space design, recognizing the historical nature of the building. So I'd like to think people like this idea and they want to see this benefits. But the challenge now is to make this concept into a reality and a commercially viable project. And a large part of what me and my team are working on diligently today and in the future is to make this a commercially viable project. Currently, it's estimated to be well over a decade in construction and many billions of dollars of construction costs. We feel currently at my team that we feel we can do better, and that is our mission, and that's what we're looking on improving and bringing that improvement to the region. because this project literally sets the foundation, even in a literal sense, for the commercial mixed-use development and the growth of the city in the future. Also highlighting a couple views and renderings and highlighting a couple of the very practical benefits, additional entrances and improved circulation and connections. There will be an additional First Street entrance, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. There will be a new H Street head house and concourse integrated with the H Street Bridge, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Further, there will be a large daylit concourse, which will improve a more intuitive navigation and wayfinding of the facility, and also site of line connections to all the transit options offered in the station. In addition to the practical benefits, there's also some qualitative benefits. Not the least of which is civic pride, excitement of growth and development. I like to think unfortunately, I don't have the exact image in here, but on the last image, you can see trains coming in at a level above you and a concourse down below. Terrific design and engineering can also lead to excitement. You know, people going into a station and understanding this is a place to be, this is a point of civic pride. And also the byproduct of making train travel and commuting cool and enjoyable again. The improved passenger experience is our focus, and the overall accessibility, options, and quality of that experience is important to deliver on the quality of life impacts that have changed the current environment under which we work. And particularly for daily commuters living in adjacent neighborhoods in Maryland and Virginia, we think delivering improved quality of life will help enhance the return to work initiatives. I want to highlight and touch on a couple of benefits across the region and the benefits for DC, including tangible growth in the city, a city on the rise, a filling of the gap and a connection of communities from east to west, the economic development story that the project can represent, including long-term impacts on employment and tax-based growth. Placemaking, serving as a local community and serving the local community, industry, business, and tourism functions, while honoring a part of DC's history and securing the heart of the transportation in the city. As for Maryland, this is important to support and accommodate the rail growth and frequency of service. We are projected to accommodate rail growth upwards of 150% of mass transportation. It will also improve the commuting experience. A better experience, a more reliable experience will give people options, and that option extends to the place of location and residence. It will represent a more efficient utilization of capital investments and the ability to partner across transit agencies and operations, such as through running. It will contribute to economic growth. While physically indirect, being located in Washington, D.C., we have confidence that this will have a direct impact on the region as a whole to locate and live and work in the region. And also, certainly not least, the environmental benefits that come along with increasing mass transportation and the ability to achieve environmental targets. For Virginia, some similarities, but also, the ability to accommodate growth, certainly in Virginia, and the increase in service and the reliability of service. Estimates of increasing growth for Virginia upwards of 250%. The improved commute and connection in the region. This underpins economic development stories, such as, global corporate real estate searches, HQ2, maybe to name one of them, and the attractiveness for corporate occupiers and the importance that that engine generates in the economic sense, but the attractiveness of access to a talented labor pool and workforce and the ability to physically connect. It's a story of economic development as well, and also the environmental impacts. As the primary hub, it is incumbent upon us, Union Station, and our partners, to getting Union Station right. This will be critical for the region and the states to fully realize the plans and investments that are being made now, now. As we try and turn this project into reality, from concept to reality, I draw on some of my past experience along with my team. Coming from New York, I was the executive director of the Moynihan Station Development Corporation, and really looking to that as a model for success. There's many similar ingredients that Union Station has as the opportunities that were capitalized on in New York, but there's a couple of key elements. A centralized project sponsor, empowered with decision-making authority to advance and drive the project towards objectives. This project sponsor is not only accountable, but is also responsible to the end users, but has the ability to operate with speed and flexibility, because ultimately that is a cost issue. Another key element is a purpose-driven entity and the clarity of mission. New York, and as we're setting up in Washington, is a clear mission of deliver base building improvements and construction, and to deliver fit-out programs for our partners per their specifications and designs and needs, and establish an operational governance for a long-term sustainable project, and in essence, set things in motion and a development corporation, the purpose has been achieved and the corporation has the opportunity to sunset. Lastly, another key element is an honest broker. Somebody who does not have a direct vested interest in a specific outcome other than the success of the project and facilitating outcomes that facilitate that. We are proposing that USRC borrow some models of success that were successful in New York and be the central project sponsor and an entity that is accountable to others. Transparency and consistency will be key to our mission. But as much as anything else, it's about credibility. Credibility with the public sector, with the private sector, with financial partners. And we understand how critical that is to form a project and deliver a project. But to function, this will all require regional support, and it needs the support from many of the folks in this room and our partners. And that includes political, financial, public, and private. The creative structures of delivery, I'd like to show this and say this is not new. This objective and mission is not a new objective, and this has been done before, and it can be done again. A couple of other model benefits that we're looking to incorporate as we bring the project forward is, the importance of reliability and credibility on budget and schedule. On time and on budget delivery is something that will be a mantra of our project going forward. The ability to change the image of train travel and provide reliability and options to people locating throughout the region. Some of the delivery model benefits is also providing Amtrak and other operators with flagship level stations and the positive reputational impacts that derive from that. Also providing a sustainable financial model with a mix of public and private investments and a long-term governance structure to preserve the building and avoid the mistakes of the past when it comes to long-term maintenance and investment in buildings. And also some other concepts is when it does come to long-term governance is, an intentional design to avoid those mistakes when it comes to facility operations, maintenance, and upkeep. Just to hammer the point home, the infrastructure can be a catalyst for development. In a decade, it has had the opportunity in New York to completely change the face of the west side of the city. And I see that generational opportunity here in Washington. This is a generational opportunity for investment, one of the most impactful developments planned for the region. This is the second busiest intercity rail hub in the country, and it is our objective and goal to create a station worthy of the nation's capital. This will enable growth in mass transportation options and the benefits that come along with that, including meeting environmental sustainability and economic development goals, and has the opportunity to strengthen employment, provide a strong base for employment, both near and long term, and enable industry to connect to deep and talented workforce that DC has become known for. The project has an opportunity to be a catalyst for sustainable growth and help secure the economic viability of the city. This is a formidable challenge, but it is also not a fantasy. This has been done, and now the challenge is, as I mentioned, is to turn this concept into reality. And with the support of the engagement of the region, we look forward to doing that in the years to come. Thank you, and I'm happy to take some questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carr, for that terrific overview and vision that you have laid out. We very much appreciate it. And as we've talked about today, I also appreciate how you underscored not just generally the regional benefits and need, but also for each of our jurisdictions, particularly for Maryland, Virginia, and DC, because we need to be looking at this project in a regional perspective. So I very much appreciate you being here today. Colleagues, I'll open it up for the next few minutes, but we will be going across the street and Mr. Carr will be joining us. But if there are any questions, particularly, I think we still have two colleagues virtual, since they will not be able to join us in person for the tour. Just wanted to see if anyone had questions virtually. I'm not seeing any. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Allen then.
Lots of questions today. Yeah. Mr. Carr, thank you very much. I know you and I have talked several times, and I'm excited about your leadership here, especially the experience you bring, and I think the way you're both adding to the vision and can help implement the vision. I was taking a couple of notes as we were talking. One is, I heard a couple of times talk about this as a generational opportunity. I think it's bigger than that. I mean, this is a century level type of investment. And I think the regional context is not just the regional opportunity, because it really is that. I would argue to my colleagues, it's also a regional responsibility. This is the rail hub for the entire region. And the district obviously has a lot at stake here, but I think as a region, we all do. And so I hope as leaders, we all see our different levers that we can pull regionally to help push for this. I was going to ask you two questions. One, you got a preview of it with previous speaker about Amtrak and essentially the decision points that get made on the H Street Bridge. Hopefully that's a relatively quick answer, but same question I asked to, I think, Ms. Mitchell earlier. Has Amtrak actually gotten to decision points here? What can I do to push them? If not, can I pull them? Can I push them? Can I prod them?
Yeah, so quick update on the H Street Bridge coordination. The coordination is ongoing, and I know you've mentioned, rolling 30-day timelines and deadlines, and we are very sensitive to that. But there's two, call it work streams, if you will, that are specific to the H Street Bridge progress. On the technical side, which involves design, coordination, the literal interface of the existing rail yard and the structural superstructure that's going to hold the bridge. On a technical level, that coordination is ongoing, and I understand from both DDOT and Amtrak that they are getting the information that they need. There will be a level of tolerance that the final design, and this is per DDOT's procurement and contracting structure. It's my understanding that this will be a design build. So we are generally just trying to locate within a small but a relative level of tolerance the final exact pier locations, which will be carried forward by that design build team. So on the technical front, it's my understanding that work is progressing in a positive direction and sign-offs are near. The second work stream includes commercial and business and development agreement issues. These issues, I think, involve both longstanding issues of property rights in the station. And we are working, even though USRC is not a direct party to this agreement, we agree with your earlier statement that this is the first domino to fall. In order for us to start to have certainty on schedule, phasing, and the sequence and how we go about construction of the station expansion plan, locking the H Street Bridge into a known schedule and rhythm is going to be of critical importance. So we at USRC share that perspective that this is our phase 0 of the station expansion project, and we are working together to help resolve what are the commercial issues which is kind of the two work streams. So technically, we're going pretty well. The commercial issues need some attention, but I don't think anything is insurmountable. And we are sensitive to DDOT's timeline to get this project moving.
Okay, thanks. And if you want to slip me a piece of paper later and tell me where to push and pull, like, let me know. The second question I had was, I know we're going to go walk over there, so we'll see the physical space and kind of help realize the physical vision of it. One of the things you talked about, I was just going to ask if you wanted to add some more context to this, has to do with the governance structure. I heard you talking about really realizing, kind of based on your experience, what you've seen work well. And I know we have the study and evaluation going on right now. Anything else you wanted to add just about the governance structure as it is, which is essentially a legacy governance structure inherited from back then? And really, is that governance structure best suited for the future, both for this project and as in the future? Or in what ways you think we need to be starting to lay out a roadmap of how governance structure would change to be able to manage both this as well as govern the structure moving forward?
Yeah, so I thank you for the question on governance, because it is a topic, a daily topic that we talk about. I would like to start probably generally by defining governance is a very broad definition and word. And in a project of this scale and complexity, there's the big G governance and there's the multiple little G's, which get into all the elements that make a project successful. There will be elements of design governance, sign off, integration of requirements and criteria, approvals of, yes, this meets our needs, just like there will be elements of financial governance, who's funding, when and how is that reporting and relationship managed. There's elements of engineering. Maybe you can fit that under the design component, but how do the spaces interrelate to each other? So when we talk about governance, I think, and we're working through the study, as you know, with the Infrastructure DC, DDOT, Amtrak, FRA, and DOT. We are working on sub-defining what is broadly defined as governance into the individual component parts. Stepping back, I do think, and I want to underscore the broader point and some of the analogies that, I've brought from my experience in New York, is the role and the importance of a central project sponsor. I believe it's critical, and in New York it was critical not only for schedule and budget implications, but also a level of fairness and input among multiple operators, recognizing that our station is not a single operator station. We have to be able to meet the needs of multiple operators, multiple modes, and those modes result in different patterns, different uses. The commuter pattern of an Amtrak passenger is very different than a MARC passenger, very different than a bus passenger. So for us, the role of a central project sponsor is, that honest broker type position where we don't have a direct vested interest in a specific outcome other than that the project and all the criteria is being met. So that what's necessary to do that is authority and responsibility. But with the authority, we by no means want to convey that it doesn't come with a great responsibility and accountability to all of the users in the station. So to me, that's a little bit of what we're talking about when it comes to governance. We focus on the big G, but we also are defining and working on all the other components that make a project successful, and the importance of a central project partner that has the mandate and mission to drive the project forward without a specific outcome in mind.
Okay, great. Yeah, Chair Mendelson.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I think the benefits of this have been a little bit understated, just so everybody understands. This will significantly increase Amtrak traffic along the northeast corridor, but also Richmond to the district and north. Significant increase with Amtrak, significant increase with VRE, significant increase with MARC. This is a multimodal station that's just going to make a huge difference in terms of transportation into and out of the region, and making the region a hub on the East Coast. So I think that just hasn't been stated enough, and the redevelopment of the station is going to make it so much easier for passengers to get into and out of the station. Right now, you get off a train, it takes, what, a half an hour to a year to get out of the station. And with the new station, it could be, if I remember correctly, about 5 minutes. because there will be exits to the east and the west and not just going out the front of the station. So this is a big deal. I'm a little bit confused. I don't quite understand where we are in terms of the 8th Street Bridge, which probably doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of folks here, but that's key to realigning the tracks, which is key to expanding Amtrak. Is that on schedule or is it behind schedule?
I think that's
Sounds like that's
more of an
behind
appropriate
schedule.
question for DDOT, given that it's their project. But my understanding to address the issue is I think we are lagging behind certain milestones that we have identified in order to keep DDOT's design build procurement.
And those milestones include Amtrak decisions?
They include a level of technical coordination and sign off, as well as putting agreements into place to manage the commercial development relationship between the parties.
I'm not sure I followed all that. So Amtrak needs to make some decisions, which they haven't, and that in turn.
Technical design and agreements. Those are the two work streams.
Well, the other work stream I was going to ask about on the governance. So is that governance involving GSA? Because I know there were some issues there, or with the private developer who's building to the north of the station?
It's my understanding that that is an unaffiliated issue. GSA has not come up in the context of delivering H Street Bridge project. We know that there is a direct relationship to the overbuild and the commercial development that happens above, quite literally roads matching up to lobby entrances, building entrances. And that work is ahead of us. You know, the station expansion project, and maybe I could have or should have mentioned earlier, we're at a 10% level of design for the station expansion project. So we have a long ways to go. I look at that as an opportunity that we have 90% of the way to go to make a lot of good decisions to make the project more viable, more commercially viable. It all starts with delivering H Street Bridge. And so I do not know that there's any direct involvement with GSA or the overbuild. To me, it's really those two streams of technical level of sign off with the margin of error. Is it 12 inches? Is it 16 inches? And where does the literal interface happen to the train? So that is a technical engineering sign off that is working its way through. And then project development agreements of how the project will be managed, recognizing that its implications on ownership, real estate ownership interests in a vertical plane, essentially. So
The latter involves a private development or H
No,
Street
it
Bridge
does not.
or
it's
what?
the sub-tunnel, the H Street underpass, which has been closed for many years, but the H Street underpass is the area that I think is where the real estate interests are.
So that involves
Lending.
district government.
It does.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Supervisor Bailey. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On the slide that you had with the percentages for ridership, I noticed that it had VRE for 250%. Is that only for ridership or is there additional standards associated with that?
I believe that's a good question. I believe that it's a capacity issue of the ability to handle essentially 2.5 times what the existing traffic is. But I want to get back with my team to understand exactly what that number is, and I'm happy to follow up with something. But I believe it's a fundamental capacity issue of, in essence, handling 2.5 times the amount of passengers that we do today.
Okay, I just wanted to know the association because I noticed that that number was slightly higher.
Being informed by Administrator Mitchell here, that it is the number of trains.
Oh, okay.
So probably a physical train capacity of what the station can handle. Thank you.
Okay, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we had all three of you here today to be able to answer those questions. I think for now, we're going to close this portion and adjourn this part of our meeting so that we can make ourselves across the street. I just want to note again, we're going to be going across the street. Mr. Carr will be joining us and Jeff King on the COG staff as well as other members of the COG staff. We will be looking at Union Station. I want to also also highlight that we are also going to be looking at some Amtrak locomotive engines that COG has been instrumental in green modernization of all that equipment. And so that will be part of our tour today. And as a reminder, we do not have board meetings in DC in July and August, but we will have our leadership retreat in Cambridge, Maryland, July 14th and 15th. And I hope to see you all there. And so now I will adjourn this portion of our meeting. And Mr. Mercer, should we meet in the lobby?
Let's make our way to the first floor lobby.
Yeah.